Good morning. My name is Gillian Balaban and I am Senior Coordinator Governance Relations at GRI. Welcome to this meeting of the Global Sustainability Standards Board, known by its acronym, the GSSB, being held on 16 November 2023. This virtual meeting is being hosted from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Please note that all public GSSB meetings are being recorded, and you can find the audio recordings on the GSSB webpage, along with high-level summaries of previous GSSB meetings. Present from the GRI Secretariat today are Bastian Buck, Chief of Standards, Harold Powells, Director of Standards, and Margherita Barbieri, Manager Standards. I will now do a roll call. Anna Nefedova.
Present.
Thank you. Cordy LaRue.
Present.
Chalandra De Silva.
Present.
Deborah Ing.
Present.
Galia Tsusankova.
Present.
Ganga Charan Sharma.
Present.
Julia Genuadi.
Present.
Jeff Robertson.
Present.
Jennifer Prinsing.
Present.
Joseph Martin.
Present.
Kim Schumacher.
Present.
Good morning, Kim. Peter Colley.
Present.
Vincent Kong.
Present.
GSSB Chair, Carol Adams.
Present.
Thank you, everyone. GSSB member Laura Dana Carter sent her apologies. I will now hand over to the Chair, Carol Adams, to open the meeting.
Thank you very much, Gillian, and welcome everybody. It's good to be together again. Our first item on the agenda is approval of the draft summary of our October in-person meeting. Can we approve that summary? Are there any questions on the summary? Any concerns? No. So hearing none, we'll take that as approved. Thank you. And the second item is an update from the Standards Division, and I'll hand over to Bastian for that.
Thank you, Carol, and good morning, good afternoon also from mine. Today, I will keep it very short. We had an extensive update in the recent meetings on how we progress with the work program overall. What I would like to mention to you in terms of our staffing efforts is that we continue to make progress. We are closing out more and more of the remaining open positions that we had difficulties to fill for sometimes more than a year. And the HR efforts at GRI are paying off. Also, the outreach efforts that some of you have been involved in are paying off. We find the right candidates, and we're slowly but surely closing the vacant positions. What that will enable us to do directionally at this stage is to review the commitments that we're making in the work program and look at resource allocation. I also wanted to mention that there is the budget process going on in the background where we represent the work program discussions that you had. And we believe that we will be in a good position in December to provide an update and in January to approve formally the work program or the addendum to the work program for 24. This is all from me for today. I don't want to take too much time. We have an important approval moment coming up. The only last mentioning here is that vision side to be in touch to promote the upcoming launches as well as the public consultation. There is an opportunity for us to connect into very many different networks, including yours. So if you have ideas on how to maximize the impact of the public consultation on the climate standards, as well as the launches of the mining and the biodiversity standard, please be in touch with us, and then we will connect to the relevant colleagues internally to GRI in the Marcoms department and elsewhere, so you can be part of that effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bastian. And so now I'm going to hand over to Harold, who's going to update on the topic standard project for climate, which will hopefully lead to us approving the exposure draft that's been tabled. Harold.
Thank you, Carol, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, unfortunately, Margarita is ill. It, of course, can happen. So I will try to cover all the elements. I was heavily involved, and we of course had an extensive presentation also at the last meeting. But as we are talking here about the approval to continue to the public commenting period for both standards under this project, so the climate change and the energy standard. I will give a short presentation and also try to cover all your questions for the comments we got in from I think almost all of you. So let's go to the next. So just to remember why we did start this, or why the GSSB asked us to revise these standards, basically to make sure it's updated to the latest best practices, and also in the light of the Paris Agreement, and then especially on the 1.5 target, 1.5 degree target. Actually, in discussions with other references, we also had a discussion whether we should mention it, because some more evidence is also that we maybe should not focus too much in the 1.5 degrees. We do it in our standards, but it was one of these typical elements why we discussed this, because yeah, we have to take more and extra efforts all over the world, and especially also non-state actors, companies and organizations, to make sure we can meet these Paris targets. So this is really the project objectives. Based on that, we started early in the year the preparation of the drafting, created to the TC, as you all know, and to make sure we could incorporate all latest insights. We had, next to the TC, we also had a heavy review with a lot of organizations outside, regulators, other standard setters, and other framework or authoritative organizations. Let's go to the next. So to give you an overview of some of them, where we looked into, this is not all of them, there are many more, but at least we aligned as to a high extent to the frameworks and instruments. Most of I think everybody will know. So the UNFCCC, IPCC, OECD, the UN. We worked heavily with the greenhouse gas protocol, because this is the authoritative references for the accounting and accounting methods, scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3. They have their methodologies in revision, so we made sure to align to a high extent with the latest insight. UK TPT, SBTI, TCFD, as I said, and there are more. We talked to many regulators over the world and got great input, which we will take into account also in the finalization of the document. On the formal standards, so the reporting standards, basically the regulatory one from EFRAG, we had exchange, we asked for review, and also with IFRS, ISSB, IFRS S2, we asked the project lead and the group to give comments and feedback, and we basically we got good feedback in the sense that people liked it. Of course, there are always small things, but in essence, we got a lot of feedback saying, well, it's extensive. It touches upon all aspects, which are now sometimes scattered in at other places. So we seem to have managed to have disclosures on all items to be touched upon in this in the next area of climate change reporting. Let's go to the next. Yes, so on the changes, and just important just to tell this again. So the standard we are focusing on is really the GRI reporting standard on climate change. So we have two standards here, but to first talk about the climate change. And the climate change, we try to focus really on the reduction and making sure organizations report the reduction efforts so that they can show that it took action, and on a year-on-year basis show that emissions are going down. You have seen all the publications all up leading towards COP28 that basically at the stock takes we see now that that although there's a lot of efforts by all organizations all over the world in reporting and having net zero targets and having emission reduction targets, we see basically that the emissions are not really going down, and therefore it's important to focus much more on the action stakes and the actual reduction. So that is what we focus on in general in the climate change standard. Furthermore, as we have aligned, so that means also we needed to add new disclosures on things we didn't touch upon that thorough, like transition plans for climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation. So of course, hugely important, and also rolled out in many, basically all organizations. Also new topics on disclosures and requirements on just transition. So what is the effect leaving no one behind basically in the transition? And we drafted together with help of many to get the right metrics there to start report, to be able to report on the just transition aspects. And as I said, in line with the latest insights from greenhouse gas accounting, mainly with inputs from the greenhouse gas protocol, but we also looked into, and of course, other authoritative reference like in ISO 14000 series. But the greenhouse emission reduction aspects, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, we updated to the latest insight. We had debate on both removals and carbon credits. So, but from transparency's sake, so we want to make sure all over the world information, or the information about how an organization is impacting and dealing with removals and how to take actions on it, and carbon credits, we wanted to get this extra transparent information in the same way all over the world being reported. So that's why we as a TC agreed that we need to have a disclosure on both removals in the value chain and carbon credits. And also on the management standard, the energy standard, I have to say. So the energy standard as such is really more like an update, and we combined two disclosures, and the update is basically again against the latest energy aspects or energy insights from the authoritative references. This means also that we had some questions on why we need an energy standard. Why can it be not all in one standard? Well, from an impact perspective, we say energy on its own is also impacting. Yeah, could have many impact aspects in there. So and we see also in the last year, there's a lot of discussion on focusing more on your energy household. So what is the impacts of the way you deal with energy, not only in relation to greenhouse gas emissions? That's the most important signal here if you read it. Of course, it's very much interconnected, but energy has its own merit to have impacts to be disclosed and the information we ask for. Let's go to the next. So basically a summary of what I mentioned. Update really on these the greenhouse gas emission disclosures. So they are not new, but they are updated here. So the old 3051 to 3054. And the real totally new disclosures, which you see here on transition plans, on climate change adaptation, just transition, target setting progress, and as I mentioned, the removal and carbon credits. Maybe also good to tell you which for instance is not in here. We mentioned some aspects about avoided emissions. We also get questions on it. So basically, you have everything inside of your boundary and things which are out of there. Avoided emissions outside of the boundary are not part of the, in that sense, are not part of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. This is one of the aspects we discuss with several organizations together to see if we could come up with the next steps, which how to deal with these kind of things from a reporting perspective. So we talk with authoritative colleagues like EFRAG and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. We will start discussions on how we could work on a better accounting method, and from our side mainly on how to report on these and how we want to talk on that and come up with a kind of position paper. But most important, it's not part of your inventory, so it's not part of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and it's in many cases it's a lot of people and organizations have the impression it is, but it is not. So that's why we really want to keep this out. Emphasize this in such a way that it's not confusing organizations in the reporting. The other part, so you could compare it with removal and the carbon credits. We really kept them separate, but with the aim to get transparency on how organizations deal with it and how they use removals and carbon credits in their strategy. That's, I think, let's go to the next. So on the energy, I mentioned it's really an update. Only added one is in the management side. So logically to ask also for the energy policies and commitments, which is not only related to climate change. So this goes a little bit further. So this is a new disclosure. The other four are updates, and the EN5, so the reduction of energy consumption. This is we combined both reduction of energy consumption and reduction of energy requirements of products and services into one disclosures, because we saw, especially in 3025 in the old standard, was almost was very little reporting upon. So we think it was not based on some comments we got, it was not very well understood. So that's why we combined them in one more general, better understandable and reportable disclosure on reduction of energy consumption. Let's go to the next. So before we go, I think to the approval, of course, give the word back to Carol and I will try to answer questions, major questions, if they are there. And of course, I would like to thank you already now for the comments you gave back. We have had a look again on whether there were major issues we really had to jump into or make changes to before we would launch. These were not really mentioned. They were not mentioned. So, but the other aspects we will take into account also during the BCP comment period, where we will go through the comments, of course, and deal with all the inputs you got. So thank you very much for that. This is very, very helpful. But if you, please, let's go back to Carol and see if I could answer things. I will try.
Thank you. So just to clarify that last point, you're saying that we asked for fatal flaws. We have not received any information on fatal flaws. We got some very helpful input from national standard setters and others that we're collaborating with. which will hopefully form part of their responses to the exposure draft, but are not seen as fatal flaws that stop the exposure draft going out. So in terms of, I'll come to any questions in a moment, Harold, but could you just outline the usual way of dealing with comments now? Are we sort of looking for fatal flaws, having a general discussion, and any points that are raised that are not fatal flaws we hold over until the next stage? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So if there is a fatal flaw, and then it's up to you to decide whether we have to amend it or not, or whether we have to wait with publication. But yeah, so just to around and with questions, but also for the audience to maybe if some things are not clear for GSB members, also good for the audience to hear that why we did write certain things and why we decided in a certain direction. So.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you. So Deborah has sent in some comments. So I'll start with Deborah. And I wonder whether these comments can be, form part of the meeting notes, the summary of the meeting, so that we have a record of them. But over to you, Deborah. Is there any that you want to elaborate on or draw out at this point?
Sure. Like I said, there are no fatal flaws. I thought this was incredibly, it was great work, very thorough. Great to see the guidance there. I guess a couple comments, there's just the bigger ones. They had some minor comments on wording. I'm not going to go through there. But just to confirm, I know we talk about transition plans, but I guess I was maybe looking for more guidance or something on, companies need to show like their roadmap for how they're going to achieve their targets. Like, project X reduces by, 10% and project B reduces by 30%. So I didn't know if there was going to be, if the report transition plan related policies and actions we're supposed to cover those types of roadmaps to the to their targets.
Thank you, Deborah. So yeah, basically we try to not repeat what other organizations do, for instance, in transition plans. So I think it's more that we want to establish the what is already established and to make sure it's covered in our disclosures. So on the transition plans, we basically we gave a guidance, but in essence we asked just to report, as you said, just to report how to describe your actions and expectations, emission reductions, and the roadmap and the way to do it. That can be part of it. Basically, it's the way the transition plan. I would say also transition plan like TPT, for instance, are asking for, or other regulatory standards. So this is basically, we do not go too much in detail like with all the aspects we ask. So, but let's test it also during the PCP. So if the disclosure online was, I think, 273. In combination with the guidance we wrote next to it, if that's clear enough, and otherwise we will amend it to make that clear how far what we expect in the disclosure wise on what to be shown. Is that somehow an answer to the question?
Yes, it is. Thank you. And I guess a second comment was really on line 1531. On the carbon credits. I think it's very important that companies are reporting on the credits that they're using, the quality of those credits. I was curious about the requirement to constantly monitor and evaluate positive and negative impacts on those carbon credits. I could imagine that a organization would have many carbon credits, many vintages, and just wondering, is there like, for how long after they've purchased and retired credits are they to monitor that? It seemed I don't do it myself. It seemed a bit burdensome, but I guess I would be happy to see sort of what the reaction is when the exposure draft goes out.
Yes, so on this part on the carbon credits, and basically again we asked to report underneath this is because we know there are methodologies. So there are other organizations having more deeper methodologies on how to do this, and also how long these periods which you mentioned. So basically we asked the organization to report upon it. Several things we got back is that for instance sometimes they simply don't know, and basically then you should go to the one you do business with to get this information. It's comparable to like something like in supply chain. If something is sent to you or you buy something, that you also ask the information from them. So in the carbon credits, to basically say it's very simple. Make sure if you are making use of them, you have to report how you deal with them, how they are dealt with in your strategy, and the information we are asking for. The idea is if you do not know that, then basically you do not know, if you do not know any of the quality criteria and cannot answer them, well, then you probably don't know what the impacts are. So either you yourself do know it, or the ones you work together with, the organizations. And so we will see more and more that organizations dealing with this, helping these carbon credits projects, that they will make sure that this information for your projects is easily available. That's at least what we got back, that is possible. I think that's an answer to the question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a fair thing for them to do. I guess maybe it's me. I'm rereading it, and I think it sounds like as long as you talk about your process for monitoring and evaluating, it's not like you're reporting on every credit and sort of confirming, the 5 points on, stakeholders and respect for human rights and so on. So.
Exactly, and it's really up to the organizations to start doing this. So yeah, but that's indeed true. You try to stay a little bit on a higher level, but it's really up to the organization. If you want to go very detailed, you do that.
Okay, thank you, Harold.
Thank you. And Corley, I saw your comment in the chat. Is there anything you want to add?
Thanks, Carol. No, just essentially to support what Deborah is saying. It would be interesting to see feedback from stakeholders on the practicalities of reporting that level of detail. But I agree that the transparency is becoming important. I mean, I'm sure you're aware that there's also a lot of development in that space. Also from a regulatory perspective, IOSCO is coming out with guidance and so on. So it's definitely a topic I think to watch. So I was really happy to see that it is being dealt with from a disclosure perspective. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Deborah and Corley. Now I see hands up from Joseph, Chalendra, Kim, and Jeff. I'm going to ask you to be very brief with your comments and to the point, because we have a very tight agenda. Thank you. So I'll start with Joseph was first.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Harold, for that presentation. One point of discussion was the carbon credits should not be a transactional thing for anybody who is using it. So it has a life cycle. So throughout the life cycle, the person who is using it or the entity that is using it should be responsible for that. That was the thought process of including that reporting of reporting and monitoring of those parameters related to carbon credits.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Fully agree.
And thank you. And Chalendra?
Thanks, thanks for the presentation. I thought the stand was very thorough. Just from a practicality of reporting perspective, just something that, in addition to the comment I made via email, in this part of the developing part of the world, Harold, we may have certain difficulties in getting, especially scope 3, things like, say, the emission factors. The databases could be pricey, could be costly. Yes, we can go on a direct calculation method, but for most companies, the secondary method of using databases to get that scope 3 would be much easier. Now, when we don't have that type of databases or have access to those kind of databases in this part of the world, would there be some kind of guidance that GRI could give within the stand to say these are the possible standards that, say, countries that don't have those type of standards could use?
And are you talking about the standards or more like categories, like in the yeah? So basically, we refer very much to the guidance documents of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, because there is a huge amount of guidances there. Yeah, I would say, Shalendra, because we discussed this, if we see there is a need, for instance, for certain regions, because we cover the entire world, to give more guidance, we should do it, of course. So but let's see how this is taken on board during the PCP. And for sure there is a difference on region, but also even in different sectors, how things are dealt in or how mature it is. So I would say scope 2, scope 3, that's scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, that's evident. And that's I mean, there is no discussion on that. But of course, where we can be of help and with some guidance, yeah, I'm also looking forward to see how this is received. So this is and then we can decide upon that. Yeah.
Yep, thank you. And I do hope we get some responses from lesser developed countries, because of course they are very much affected by climate change in all sorts of ways. So thank you, Chalendra. Kim?
Yeah, I just have a very quick question to carbon credits. I just wanted to know, since again, as was said, like the market is evolving very quickly, and a lot of organizations are more and more relying on them. In the draft, or in the I couldn't necessarily find, and please do let me know if that is the case. Is there some form of how do I say, accountability mechanism that goes within it? Because now we see, for example, a lot of projects, especially nature-based carbon offsets, they face a lot of issues around additionality. And is there any form of mechanism that says that even what has been reported and was right at some point, if a project is found out to be fundamentally flawed within that scope, so that a company needs to report updates around carbon offsets, because they can significantly impact the perception of the efforts, and that does not necessarily mean there's a year time, because we've seen it, for example, with some projects in South Africa or East Africa, where almost everything has been cancelled, and a lot of companies, a lot of organizations purchase those offsets. And also after, for example, a natural disaster, if just 1 million offsets are vanishing. So how do you deal with that with those dynamics? How should they be reported, in a sense? And I don't find anything around it, and it's very specific to carbon credits. I don't find anything in the current draft that takes account of that. So are there any efforts to take account of that, or is it just currently as is?
So as I touched a little bit on it, thank you, Kim. So basically, it's really the real first aim now, as we said, in the end, because of this dynamic in the market, it's the aim really to increase and transparency regarding the use of that's literally what we write, I think, on carbon credits. So So basically, you report on the quality criteria and the purpose, how you cancel them, and how the results may result in positive and negative impact. That's the first step. Also for this one, I would say, and also on the evaluation and the monitoring, as also I think Deborah was asked questions. But basically, so that's our first step, and we want to test this. We got a lot of positive reply on that. So of course there are much more details, as you also mentioned, which are hugely important. The first step is really to create this transparency, because it's a totally new disclosure, and we wrote it in such a way, it's not the way you use it is really separated from the other disclosures in such a way that we hope it's, well, I think, I'm pretty sure actually that it's dealt with and reported in a separate way. And during PCP, let's see how these things also, which you touch upon, Kim, whether more organizations are giving us this feedback and how we should or could deal with this. Yeah, that's it for now, I would say. But first step is really to create this transparency on a global level with one disclosure in the same way for all organizations to report upon.
Thank you, Harold and Kim. Jeff.
Excuse me. Thanks, Carol. Very briefly to your point, Carol, and just keeping the time. No, as a practitioner in this space, honestly, I thought the addition of CC6 was very, very much a welcome one. And to Kim, to your point, I think in section C, we're required to report on additionality and permanence. And then in section D, we're required to report the purpose of any cancellations. So I think it does give at least a good starting point to start to report, because obviously there have been many events recently that have sort of shaken the confidence in especially nature-based offsets. So no, just wanted to provide my comment that I thought this was a really welcome addition and a positive one. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you very much. And I see no more hands up. Peter Colley has previously sent some comments through by email. So if we could include this feedback that we've had at the meeting and by email in the summary of the meeting, that would be fantastic. And I think we can now go to the approval process. So I'll hand back to Gillian for that.
Harold, do we need to do a full roll call now, or can we just have an overall approval?
As I was aware, but I think we can just do an overall approval.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So as long as everybody agrees, then this exposure draft is
Yes. Yeah.
approved. And then we have a second one for the energy exposure draft. So
okay. Any further comments on that? Being none, can we take that as approved? Okay, we can take that one as approved as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Caroline, I had one additional slide. I thought I'd do it differently because we cannot say anything on the next in the planning before we have approval. So just very short on the, so based on this approval, first of all, thank you very much. I think it was a intensive project till now. We got a lot of comments in a good way, so that it and also from, I think, almost all GSB members, we got comments in the latest weeks. As again, we will deal with them, take them into account. And I want to already thank also the team who worked on this. Unfortunately, Margarita could not be here, but it's an amazing job they did. We are launching it end of November, with the established dates are the 21st of November to launch, and then it will run till the 29th of February. As you are aware, and as you may expect from GRI, we will do our global launches. At the moment, we have over 4,000 registers. Of course, they will not all show up, but this is just after a first reminder. So it works. There is still a lot of need for that. We will do 2 Q&A global webinars in January, and next to that, we will be in COP just to do some presentations and explaining our views on climate change and what is needed to accelerate from, and how this tool, the tools of GRI reporting standards could help in that. And of course, we also do some regional events, especially based on the discussions we had several times. It's very important on the just transition aspects and the negative impacts, possible negative impacts from climate change in other regions, especially in Africa and Latin America, to put extra effort. So we will go there and do also local workshops and events to get feedback on especially those disclosures, like a just transition, like credits and all these kind of projects which are typically done in those regions and have effects. So we want to get a feedback on that. Yeah, thank you again. Thank you all for the good comments. If everything goes well, after that, of course, we're going to analyze all the comments with 1 or 2 TC meetings, and then we're aiming for an approval, bring it back to the GSSB in Q3, so or Q3, Q4, so we're able to at least publish it at the end of 2024, both standards. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, GSSB.
Thank you, and thank you very much to all of the team, the Standards Division, all the volunteers on the technical committee, and all the GSSB members who have provided input and read it carefully too. Thank you. So Harold, it's now back to you for something else, the Standards Development Project Priorities in 2024, and we will have to stop on the hour, if not before, because we do have some significant business in our private session. Thank you.
Yeah, basically it's an update on looking forward at our work program, and so most of this you have seen, so we can gain some time back, so get some do it efficient. But just to, since the last GSSB, we had several developments, and also which makes that we can be a little bit clearer on the priorities here, which we will in our formal year plan, which we present to you to be approved, also that's the direction we will go to. So again, on this one, you saw about the sector program, but at this moment in time, we can for sure say that the one in the box, this is really what we will focus on. So the mining will be sent to you next month for publication, approval for publication. Financial services, 3 TCs are in heavily development, so they will continue. There is a focus on, and the textile and apparel we will start next year. That's really from sector level. On a sector base, this is what we are in general aiming for. Last time we showed what was more listed in the work program. At this moment, we see this not being realistic. So this will not end up in our proposal unless there are very good arguments or questions from all of you to say, hey, no, this is really need to be prioritized for whatever reason. We can discuss it. It's also up to the discussion with the GSB, of course. Yeah, so this is really for the sector. Do you want to add something to that, Bastian? I think.
Well, only that our continued efforts to recruit will influence our ability to look at commencement of additional projects, right? And it's looking positive that we can add back capacity to the sector program team, replace positions that have become vacant. But just to confirm what Harold said, that we are committed to the 3 projects that are displayed here: mining, financial services, textile, and apparel, acknowledging that financial services actually is 3 projects or 3 standards. So the ambition overall was to get to the level of 5 projects in parallel, and that seems still achievable, assuming that we start or commence one of the additional sector standards projects next year.
Thank you, Bastian. Then have a look at next slide. So don't be overwhelmed, but also you saw this before. So on the topic side, basically on all the latest developments and insights we saw, then we will finalize biodiversity. And that's of course the aim, bringing it to the GSB next month. The labor project with the number of projects you see here. So next year there's a lot of effort to bring the first PCP, the public commenting, the first drafts to the public in 2 phases. Climate change I just mentioned, we will try to publish it. Economic impacts is starting next month. The working draft proposal, so the working group composition will be sent to you for approval. But also this is more than one standard, as you can see if you just count them. In line with what Bastian was saying, we say it's not realistic to start much more. There's also not a need because this was all highlighted in the work program. So let's go to the next. But still, so based on a little bit comparable to what we discussed last time, what we can say, it's not realistic to really start on the indigenous people and local communities topic next year. So so it will be very early 2025, or only the proposal coming to you in 2024. But we do not account them. Digitalization. It is on the roll, is on the roll for research project. We're still debating it, whether we are able to cover it with the amount of work which is ongoing. So, and also as the entire organization. So also these 3 for the moment, and I based on the discussion we have, I do not expect it will end into the work plan for next year. Based on what we were saying here, not only recruitment, but also the breathing possibility of the entire organization, because we will bring some final documents, but also more than 10, much more than 10 draft standards to the public next year, and it has to go through all the processes. And also our reporters and everybody out there also have to deal with it. So that's so it's ambitious. We commit to what especially what's ongoing. And then finally the next one. So also mentioned last time, but just to summarize it again, there are really some other projects. The number of projects outside of our work program, you could say, well, it's part of the work program with GSB, but not the straightforward standards, but things like the guidance, things like the alignment we mentioned before. Translation we have anyway, but linkage documents, mapping documents, interoperability, guidance and efforts with EFRAG and ISSB and possibly other regulators that this will take a lot of resources. So this is we have to do this, and we will do this, and we'll end up in the activities for next year. So all this together is, I think, we're already narrowing down to the final proposal to be discussed with you. But I think we just want to give a summary on the latest insights and the direction we're going from our point of view. I think, Bastian, do you want to add some things here?
Just to emphasize this reality that going forward across the different projects that we're running, but also for the GIS standards as a whole. We have a reference to the taxonomy here, for example. We will have to explain ourselves in light of regulatory developments and vis-a-vis other standards in a much more comprehensive way. I think GI has always worked towards that change moment in corporate reporting, and actually having more and more parties, institutions on the national and international level embracing the change that is needed to include sustainability considerations. Well, we can safely say that we're arriving at this point now, but that is a very significant additional work, and I can say for this year we were sometimes surprised about additional requests and regulatory engagements, and we will invest more time in this going forward to be able to support it from a technical perspective. So you will see in the near term also strengthened efforts to explain newly released contents vis-a-vis these other efforts. And we're looking at the resource requirement of this. Things like the Xperia taxonomy, we're learning a lot, and we understand now even better that these will be projects that deserve probably even full-time FTEs going forward for maintenance and all of that. And we will bring this back to you also in reflection for the 24 schedule. But I wanted to highlight that this will become a more and more important component of our work.
Yeah, we are seeing a number of national standard setters and jurisdictional standard setters wanting to engage with us, want to cover impacts that are in GRI standards. And of course, it is helpful all round for reporters if they align with the GRI standards as much as possible, taking account of national differences, and that certainly would decrease the amount of resources that we have to put into linkage documents and so on. Kim, you have your hand up.
Yes, within the work plan, and I'm not sure, I wanted to ask, does the GRI, and you could say like everything in GRI revolves around that, but will there any specific guidance issued around greenwashing? Because that is something that is now on the table of a lot of regulators. It's being a lot talked about. You could say that every standard of GRI is around reducing greenwashing and transparency, but sometimes it's like, yeah, what exactly qualifies as greenwashing? And maybe sometimes instead of having to go to each individual standard, I think it would be useful just to have a general definition. And you could say that that differs from sector to sector, but at least you have something, the GRI, because greenwashing as a practice is currently not very well, how to say it, isolated within all the documents that GRI has. So I wonder, do you plan on doing that? I do think it is absolutely necessary. People might disagree, but regulators definitely go into that direction. So I do think that would definitely be something that would provide very valuable guidance to companies and to also those who read reports.
Well, certainly in conversations that I'm having and talks that I'm giving, what I am emphasizing is the importance of the process in GRI 3 in determining significant impacts. Because if we can't trust that process, then we don't know whether an organization is reporting all its significant impacts. So that's one thing that we are emphasizing, that we are looking for organizations to report their most significant impacts. Secondly, what I've been emphasizing is a need to have that process externally assured and included within the scope of assurance engagements. So that's the way that I've approached it. It's 6 minutes to the hour, Bastian. So if you could be very brief, please, and then I'll go to Joseph.
Yeah, I think I would add to this that there is a decision point coming up within the next 2 years, I would say, in relation to assurance and how the expectation for assurance is formulated in the GRI standards. As you know, the IAASB is developing its approach, and that will be an important element to counter greenwashing. We had them on your schedule presenting their work, and there will be an update soon on this after their public consultation. The other thing I would say is that we're providing input across a range of regulatory efforts that address greenwashing, not at a high level and generically, but for specific product groups, investment vehicles, and so on an ongoing basis. I think where we can add most is, and to echo Carol's comments, to highlight our principles that are handled in approaching GRI reporting, and then looking at the process disclosures and eventually also the assurance of the full package of information. So I would acknowledge that there are a number of initiatives, but we really depend also on other parties that we can anchor our work to, right? And the most important one is the assurance standard that is developed by the IAASB.
Assurance and governance oversight also. Joseph, very briefly, please.
Yeah, very quickly. When you talk about greenwashing, the GRI principles of reporting and GRI principles of quality, if you follow for every disclosures, then no, there is a high chance that you can avoid greenwashing. But as a process, I think it is very difficult to define that process. But a recommendation to all our clients when people ask about greenwashing is just follow these principles. No, then you can actually reduce the risk of greenwashing.
Follow the principles, make sure you've got the internal controls in place, and make sure you've got the governance oversight in place too, and the external assurance. I think we're going to have to leave it there.
Can I just very briefly respond? Yeah. I see all those points, and they do make perfectly sense, but none of these really isolates greenwashing, because what every of the speakers now said is like, oh, I explain it within that context. I explain it in this area. I explain it related to this. But there's nothing that really says this is the guidance on greenwashing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be, it can, of course, relate to all the other and can provide advice where to find. But there's nothing that really highlights
no, you're right, Kim. What we are doing is advising a way of and giving guidance on a way and developing standards in a way to avoid greenwashing if the standards are followed, and if the governance oversight is there and the external assurance is there. And we're also developing guidance on how to go from identifying those most significant impacts to identifying risks and opportunities, so that the reporting on risks and opportunities is also complete. So that is what GRI's key position in the landscape is on this, I think. Resources are stretched. So we need to focus on our core work. I guess that is all I can say in response to that. Anybody have anything else to add there?
I could only say thank you, Carol. We're closing this item down. So basically, this is an update. We come back, of course, with final draft, final program for the year to be approved. This will probably be done in the January meeting. That's what I can say. Any add-ons, questions you have based on this presentation or from last time on the work program, the envisioned work program, please reach out to GSB Secretariat. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, final comment?
Yeah, very briefly, just to maybe partly address Kim's point, could we even just like a GRI blog post or something to say, greenwashing is a hot topic right now. What do we think about it? Here are our principles, like just kind of lay that out in a informal thing that we can ship out very quickly.
Yep, I think that would be great. Perhaps Kim would like to draft it. And we can give it to the comms people to have a look at it and post it.
Yeah, I can do that.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Kim. Okay, so this closes the public session for today. Thank you all very much, and thank you to the staff.